All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us in the Managers in Transition for the topic of how the ICMA coaching program can be valuable to you. Uh, this is a program that frankly I've found to be very valuable in terms of coaching for myself over the years, as I've been in a variety of leadership programs as CEO of organizations in both the public and the private sector. Um, and it's really helped me to be effective in my transitions that I've had. And I want to just make a comment here at the start in support of you that are managers in transition. My view over the 40 plus years that I've been involved in this work is that, you know, anybody who's doing anything interesting is going to face a time when they're in transition, because you're taking risks, you're putting forward your best efforts, you're working in a challenging environment, and that's going to happen. So I think the important thing is to recognize that. In fact, in Silicon Valley, they say, hey, if you haven't been fired from someplace, you know, you just haven't made your mark yet. You know, and Steve Jobs and everybody else down the line has gotten fired from someplace or another. And I can identify with that as well. So I hope that you are holding your view of where you are in your career with that sort of appreciation, and that others are appreciating that about you as well. And that's a key element where coaching can be helpful. And what I'd like to do for you today is to show how coaching can help you move through these kinds of transitions, what sort of resources are available here, how that can augment the things that you're already doing that would help you. And we're even going to see if one or more of you would like to volunteer and have a brief coaching session with me here online. Now, obviously, that's something that others would be hearing, but you know, frankly, I found that anyone who stepped forward and volunteered to be coached in a public or semi-public kind of context has always found that it's redounded to their benefit, because it means that more people learn about what that person is interested in and what their story is and where they want to be going. And I found that those folks often find accelerated progress in achieving their next career goals. So let's take a look at some of the resources here. I'm on the page, which is icma.org/coaching. That's how you find it. And this is where the resources are for you to be tapping. We have a series of webinars. I want to highlight one of the webinars. So if you click on webinars, you see the webinars we have yet coming and the ones that we've already completed. Martha Perego, who's on the line with us, was on our most recent webinar on ethics in action, and those are available in the archives. But I want to highlight one of them that's coming up here that I think will be particularly valuable to many of you. It's survival skills for managers. It's coming up on October 20th. When you want to register for any of these sessions, you simply click on them. It takes you to a registration page, and you can just enter your information. It's open to anybody. There's no charge for the webinars, and you can participate in those and benefit from them. So that's one quick way that you can be tapping into a storehouse of knowledge. But now you might be saying, hey, I'm a manager in transition, and here it is the 1st of August, and October 20th is a long ways to go. Well, one of the things that we have are archives of past webinars, and there's a number of them that I think might be of interest to you. We've got a session that was on May 14th of last year, moving from conflict to civility and problem solving. Oftentimes managers get into challenging circumstances when their communities are in conflict, and figuring out how to handle that is important. These are all archived with both video and full agenda packets with the PDFs of the PowerPoints, etc. Everything that you need to be getting the best information possible from those sessions. So I encourage you to take a look at those. We also have a session that was here on March 5th of last year on developing effective relationships with elected officials. That's probably the #1 reason that transitions happen for managers, at least at the city manager or county executive level. Transitions happen for many reasons at many different levels. But you can simply click on those. The interesting thing is, if you click, we'll click on this one as an example. It'll take you in a moment to that session. Let me just double click. Here we go. Here's the session coming up. Here's the agenda packet. And you'll hear in a moment the video starting for that session. Well, hello everyone and welcome to... And so you can watch this. You can watch it full screen if you want, so it's bigger. And you can view that yourself or with other colleagues. It gives you all the information that you need, and you can move forward and check out different sections of this. This is the ending of the first part here from Oregon. There's another part here where we ask questions, get polls, etc. So there's lots of different ways that you can benefit and get advantage from these, and they're all available. They're digitally recorded. You can watch it on your Android or iPhone device, iPad, PC, whatever you want. The agenda packet here with all the PowerPoints and all the information of biographies of the presenters, etc., are available. You can print it out if you wish. You can take a look at it. You can do a variety of things to see, what's available here that you'd like to put into practice. And there are a lot of different practical ideas that members of the profession offer for how to deal with these tough issues that are common for people in grappling with key topics in local government. So these are always accessible 24/7. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to have any other special access. It's a great way for you to be keeping up with things that are happening, expanding your base. I know one of the things I've found when I've been in transition, it is always useful to be able to talk more broadly about what's happening in the profession, what are some key insights to demonstrate that I'm continuing to learn to the people that I'm looking to work with in the future. And that's something that you can certainly do with these resources from the coaching program. So that's one major area of resource here. And we'll take a look at some of the others. So that's the webinars, that's the digital agendas and archives. What I want to, and we have some, as Greg mentioned, Frank Benest, who's been one of the leaders in the program to get coaching out to states around the country. We have 25 state association coaching partners, which we're very grateful for. But he also writes a career compass column. You'll see a column in there, for example, number 48. There are now 50 of them that he's written. But how do I benefit from a coach? And so he gives the stories and examples from his experience and from circumstances that he's heard from others. And you can read these, print them out, do whatever you'd like. Many of them have links to other resources so that you can be accessing more and more information to help you be effective in thinking through your career, thinking through your next steps, and considering how you'd like to go forward. So these are just a few of the resources. One of the resources that I'd particularly like to link into today, because I think it's going to be especially helpful to you as managers in transition, is really the one-on-one coaching resources that you see here. So you can certainly at any time you want take a look at these in some more detail, but let's zero in on the one-on-one coaching. And I want to highlight that as we view coaching, and certainly as I present it for ICMA, coaching is really for everybody. If you think about it in a sports analogy context, the top players in the field have coaches as well as the folks that are trying to come up along the way. And that's because each of us has a challenge in seeing ourselves as we're out involved in engaging in our career. It's very difficult to have perspective on ourselves. It's sometimes easy, I know for me, to sort of slide by some things that I know are eating at me, but I'm not dealing with them because I haven't really confronted them. And one of the benefits of a candid, confidential coaching relationship is that you can get those things out of the table. My observation is, both from my own transitions and from the transitions that I observe of city managers and county executives and senior department heads and so on, is that 90% of the time the transitions do not come about because of some lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of technical skills. 90% of the time the transitions, especially undesired transitions, that is undesired from the vantage point of the manager, occur because we've we've missed something. We haven't really dealt with something, or we haven't figured out how to address it given all the challenges of elected officials and other dynamics and public dynamics that go on that can make it very challenging to address it. I mean, there's some situations that, just flat out unresolvable from a manager's point of view, and that's to be understood. And yet I think there are many others where getting some perspective can be helpful. So that's maybe water under the bridge for you that are in transition, because, okay, you're now looking at going forward to the next step. But that, I think, is again where a coach can be helpful to you. Somebody that you can feel candid with, somebody, not a recruiter, not a prospective person that you're going to be working with in a community that you'd like to be pursuing, et cetera. Although it's always good to have those relationships, but somebody where you can just kind of let your hair down and talk about what's going on and how you'd like to go forward. So I invite you in that context to think of your career like a story, and your talent as being a talent story. And your story is one in which you're trying to figure out, what your next chapter is and how to move beyond the chapter that you're in. And oftentimes things get in our way when we're trying to work on our next chapter. It might be regrets that we've had about the past. It might be fears that we have about the future. How are people going to look at me given that they know I was squeezed out, eased out, fired out of my last role? How am I going to navigate that? How am I going to work through that? And oftentimes in that context, a lot of fears arise for us. I know they do for me when I encounter those contexts. And that's why it's important to figure out, okay, how can you kind of work through those so that last relationship, or whatever the circumstance was, doesn't cloud moving forward into the next. And if you haven't had an occasion to read Kubler-Ross's 7 Stages of Grieving, I think it's a very apropos one. It's really about people who are dying. Now, you're not dying. You're moving on to a next opportunity. But it is about, how do we let go of things that are, and how do we come to grips with things where we've lost something. And so I encourage you to look through those stages and figure out what stage are you in and how do you want to move on to the next stage. But that's really where a coach can be helpful to you. We have lots of different resources here about being a great coach and a winning player. So when you click on that, it brings up a sheet of how to look through those and deal with those issues, what good coaches and good players do, some guidance along those lines, lots of things for you to take a look at and to work through. And you can certainly find an effective way to move forward and to be successful. We also have about 100 members of the profession. They range from senior members of the profession through to sort of department heads. They're in the coaches gallery that you can click on. You can see something about them, get some background information concerning them, and you can click on any of these and find out some more about them. If you're a county exec, you might be interested in learning about the county exec. It gives you the information from the ICMA database about them. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be learning about the people who are here. Now, the interesting thing that we found about all these, having attracted all these coaches who are eager and willing to volunteer and be supportive of you and others in the profession, is that actually we have more coaches than we have demand. And so the question is, well, what's sort of getting in the way of people wanting to make access to that? So what we're doing is we're encouraging senior advisors to help people, managers in transition and others to um, make connections with appropriate coaches, to be of support and assistance in that regard. We're also looking at the state associations that are part of the coaching program to assist in helping people to connect. One of the things that we do, that if you're coming to the ICMA International Conference, we have speed coaching, which is a fun way to get connected and expand your network with a whole bunch of people. And again, this isn't just senior executives talking to rising stars, but we have a number of people that are at senior levels that come to these sessions that are interested in getting connected with more people, getting perspectives on their topic, doing it in quick rotation. This can help you find somebody that you feel a good connection with. There's a whole variety of things that you can do through that approach, and that way of being able to move forward in your career. So lots of resources here, lots of things that you can be tapping to be effective in doing this. So one of the issues is, well, what is the coaching session like, and how might you benefit from it, and is it right for you or not, or what would you like to consider as possibilities for its application in your own activities, in your own planning for your future, etc. And is this a resource you'd like to be tapping, especially on the one-on-one coaching side? So what I'd like to do is in a moment offer up an opportunity to do a little bit of coaching, but let me show you what the format is here. There's a lot of different ways to coach. I'm a master certified coach, and one of the things that I've done is work to develop there's a two-sided sheet here that has 10 steps in it for a coaching conversation. It comes from the book I wrote, Take Charge of Your Talent, 3 Keys to Thriving in Your Career, Organization, and Life, in which my co-author Jay Perry and I did the research on, what brings out from the neuroscience understandings and from high performance psychology, the best thinking of people, what helps them to be dealing with the challenges in front of them in constructive ways so that their most creative thinking comes forward, and how to do that in a way that translates into action. So we have what we call a talent catalyst conversation. Let me just blow this up a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to read on the screen. So it's a talent catalyst conversation. The idea is, how can somebody be a catalyst for you? So what does a catalyst do? Well, a catalyst in chemistry, is something that precipitates a reaction, accelerates a result, brings about some positive, constructive change. And the important thing about a catalyst in chemistry is that the catalyst doesn't get used up. It doesn't get consumed. It doesn't, in other words, become part of the reaction. It rather stimulates a reaction. So that's what I want for each of you as you're thinking about the next chapter in your career, is how could somebody help stimulate a reaction, stimulate some thinking, help you see some new, fresh ideas for yourself. So one of the ways that a coach does that in being a catalyst is to really be a very effective, what I call generous listener. A generous listener is somebody who listens to what your hopes are. That's a key part of this here. And why they're important to you. So zeroes in on who you are, where you want to go, and then reflects back what they hear to give you a chance to see how your own thinking is playing out. A lot of times, it's hard for us when we're grappling with change, when we're grappling with a challenging dynamic, to be effective in really kind of getting perspective on ourselves. So just like a mirror gives you a way to see yourself and see parts of yourself that you wouldn't see just by looking at yourself from within yourself, and a good coach is a generous listener who is first and foremost a great reflective listener. That is somebody who helps reflect back what they're hearing from you, helps to discern the energy and interests that underlie those ideas that you're sharing, and who holds out the best for you and gives you that chance to get a mirror on yourself. A catalyst, a coach, also is somebody effective in helping to move through a series of questions that will stimulate your thinking and stimulate your thoughts about what actions you might like to take, how you can move forward. Coaching is all about forward movement. Psychotherapy is all about, who did what to whom in your past life, and how that's impacting your behavior. Coaching doesn't attempt to sort through all that. If you wish to do that with a psychotherapist. We're really here to help you think about your next chapter in your story and how to move forward. Understanding and appreciating what might be critical to have in terms of the background of your situation, but not really dwelling on your past chapter, rather talking about where you are currently and where you'd like to go forward. So that's a little bit about what we're doing with regard to coaching, and what are some of the ways that it can be helpful to you. So you can see a series of questions here that go from connecting with your hopes. We ask people about their hopes because if fears, as we've learned, really keep us from our best thinking, our hopes actually light up the best parts of our brain. Our prefrontal cortex is like the executive function of our brain. It kicks in. Our cerebral lobes that have creative ideas about what we could do next come into play. There's a lot of things that come about by just asking people about what their hopes are. It actually changes the way the brain functions in positive ways. Then we look at concerns. We look at success stories. One of the important things to look at is, when you're dealing with how you're going to get from your hopes through the concerns you have, is to say, well, how have you dealt with situations like that in the past? Whether it be in a work situation, a community situation, a home environment, or whatever. If we can tap the things that we've already done successfully and learn how those could apply to the situation we're in, we have a lot of leverage for going forward in the future. Then you'll see that there's discussion about, well, how do you want to learn and grow and develop, how you're going to need to be, what resources are available to you, how do you want to stretch, who can help you as a talent fulfillment team, what concrete actions you'd like to take, and how you'd like to reflect on your possibilities and the progress that came about in this discussion. This outline here is designed to work in an hour or less. I've done them sort of in 35 minutes and some that have crept over an hour. But the whole idea is to have it be something that you could do with somebody, over lunch, over a coffee, on the phone, whatever else. So that's a little bit about how I do coaching. Now, there's many different ways of doing coaching. I've tried to create a format here that people can adopt and use. And that is proven successful with thousands of people around the world and local governments and for-profit enterprises, et cetera, where people have gotten very tangible, identifiable improvements in the use of their talent and in their job satisfaction through these techniques. And so I know this works. So it's like a recipe, it's a recipe that you can put the ingredients in. That's you and the person who's coaching you, or if you're coaching somebody else. However that goes, and be pretty confident that you're going to get a high quality product out of it. You may choose to coach it or be coached in different ways. Obviously, you need to ask for what you want. So there's a variety of things that you can ask for in a coaching relationship. You can ask for, hey, I'm looking at a new community. Can you take a moment or two to help me understand something about that community because you're in an adjacent one and I'd like to learn about it? That's a very simple, straightforward, factual, informational situation. Another one might be, hey, I just like to expand my network and people who are effective in dealing with the following kinds of situations because I'd like to get some more perspectives. That's a networking request. That can be very straightforward. You don't have to go through this whole conversation to do that. You can just pick up the phone and look at, and talk with somebody who could help you out on that. You can scan through that list of coaches in the coaches gallery to get there. So there's a variety of different ways that you can be tapping. So not all conversations have to be this format or this way. I've found, however, that for myself and for the thousands of people who've done this, that oftentimes what we think is the real issue isn't really the issue that we most need to deal with to move forward. It's not to say that it isn't an issue. You've probably discerned that very accurately. But one of the things that coaches can do is help you really ferret out what's critical for you. What do you really need to look at? What is a different perspective that you could have on what you are trying to deal with that might make the original topic you had in mind become less relevant because there's something else that needs to be grappled with. My observation is that if you're dealing with an issue, and the issue's been around, whether it's a substantive issue in your community or it's an issue about your own career, and it's been sort of stewing and simmering there for 3 months or more, there's probably some other issue there in that situation that is needs to be dealt with to make progress, because you're smart, the people you work with hopefully are smart, and you have figured a way through if you're all focused on the right issue at the right time in the right way. So one of the things that coaching can do is help you to figure out what those real issues are, how you might want to move through them and deal with them effectively, and to be able to go forward with it. So what I'd like to invite now is I'm going to open up the phone lines here, and I'd like to do two things. Invite you to ask questions about the coaching resources, provide comments about them, that sort of thing. So just make sure that the information's coming across as clearly as possible. And then after we get the questions sorted out and any reactions or things that you'd like to just observe or comment about or clarify, then we'll move on to see if one or more of you would like to launch forward on a brief part of this coaching conversation with me, just so that I could illustrate for the benefit of you, the volunteer, and for your colleagues, how this flows, what the role of a coach is, a little bit how that works. We won't have time to go through in the remaining time of this hour the whole conversation, but I can give you kind of a feel for what this is like, and that might help you understand, hey, how could coaching be helpful to you? And now there might be volunteer coaches who will do this differently than I will. Undoubtedly there are, but I want to give you a feel for what this resource is like and how you could put it into practice. So let me try this. Let me open up the lines to all of you and see who has a question or a comment that you'd like to offer about the resources that are available and how to access them, or anything else that I could offer to be of help to you. My whole purpose here is not to sell you anything or push you to do anything you don't want to do. I just want to be a resource to you in the next steps in your career. So please use me in that way. Questions, comments?
This is Greg, Don. In regard to those members who have volunteered to be coaches, the list you showed us, the webpage, have they been, I guess trained maybe is not the right word, but has there been a certain consistent and uniform level of exploration with them on how to conduct the coaching?
Well, that's a great question, Greg. And these are folks that have been vetted by their respective states as people that are respected in their states for their perspective on the profession, et cetera. One of the things that ICMA has requested me to do, and I'm going to have it completed before the ICMA conference, is I'm actually going through and developing brief training videos for coaches, and also brief training videos for players, as we call them, coaches and players, on how to get the most out of coaching and what are the techniques and approaches to do it effectively. So what we're seeking to do with that, because what we found is we got some coaches and we got some players, and they sort of teamed up, and then they kind of met, and they said, okay, now what are we supposed to do? And how are we supposed to have this work? And sometimes you also have coaching that happens across generations, so there's different dynamics of how people interact and so on. So before the conference, we'll be putting up online some videos, some additional resource materials, etc., so that people will have more support on coaching. Not that they have to do it that way, but again, it's a recipe that works. So I encourage people to use the recipe that works and then figure out, how you want to do your own recipe. But if you're uncertain, this will get you there.
Yeah. I see one of our senior advisors just looking at the first page is a coach as well as a senior advisor. So.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of folks, and it's all alphabetical here right now. ICMA is also working on a tool to help people identify, based on their interests, and by their geographical preferences, who might be appropriate for them. And so ICMA is working on that tool, and hopefully that will be coming forward as well as yet another way for people to figure out, who would be somebody good to connect with and how to get started. But I think senior advisors are a great resource, or your regional directors or ICMA vice presidents are great people. They typically have wonderful networks, and they can help you get connected with people that they think would be appropriate for the topic and interests that you might have.
Hey, Don.
Yes.
This is Calvin Peck from North Carolina. I was looking through the list of 100 or so identified.
Right.
99 are in California, and one's in Texas. Now that probably says a lot more about how active California has been in trying to put this together than anything else. But that's a whole coast away from a lot of us.
Yeah, great point, and we really take that to heart, which is why we have a special session at the ICMA conference on being a great coach and a winning player. And we're encouraging every state association coaching partner, and anybody else for that matter, to come to that session and to participate in the training, get themselves some experience in what coaching is like, see if they like to do it, if they're comfortable with it, and then to connect with their state association, because we really are very eager for this to be a much more robust and much more representative sample of the whole ICMA membership. The coaching program in California has been in place for 13 years, so that's been a lot of groundwork to get into place. This is the first year of the ICMA coaching program, although we've had other state association partners. Texas is getting actively involved. We're seeing, other places, but Texas, Illinois, a few others are getting actively involved, and we're hopeful that will be multiplying out across the country. The other thing I'd mention to you is that, if you think of a coach is, the role of coaching is not to be an answer provider. That is not to try to know your circumstance better than you do, to know your community better than you do, et cetera, et cetera. Rather, a great coach will help you find the answers for yourself. And so it's not always necessary for you if you're, if you only want to be a manager or a department head or a county executive in North Carolina. You don't have to have a coach from North Carolina to help sort through a lot of issues and figure out some things. They'll probably, talk with you about, well, who could you connect with? What are the resources you've got out there that you could be linking in with? But the role of a coach here is first and foremost to help you sort through the issues you're dealing with, help you get some clarity in your own thinking, help you to find and tap the strengths and capabilities within you so that you can be effective in your role, because this is the story of you, not my story. So if I start jumping into the coaching and say, well, you know, if I were in your shoes, I would do thus and such, well, then it's not your talent story anymore. It's my story. And you can't be the hero of my story if I've taken away the power and strength of that by you know, inserting myself over and above. Now I can offer you ideas and suggestions with permission after you've explored your ideas. That's good. And that's a way to help move forward in an effective manner as well. So a variety of things that are important, and that's one of the reasons why we're trying to help clarify the role of a coach. And so thanks for your question. Who else has a question? Who else has something you'd like to ask as an observation or make as an observation or as a question? And then if you're willing to do the first few questions in this coaching conversation here that you can see outlined on this sheet, it may have gotten forwarded to you for today's session. Would you just send me a chat message and then I'll know who's willing to step forward, and if you are, we'll get started in a couple minutes and actually get you a feeling of what coaching is like. Because I found for myself when I was first coached 20 years ago and before I became a master certified coach, that experiencing it was the biggest thing in helping me to understand what value could offer to me and what value I could provide to others. Other questions, comments, observations, things you'd like to explore?
Yeah, hey Don, this is Steve, go ahead.
I've been on the MIT list here in Florida now since 2012. I've had some interim assignments here and there to hold me over. But how realistic? I mean, well, I'm a senior professional. I've been at this for over 30 years and have worked in a couple of different states. But I just don't know how realistic it is for me at age 69 to be pursuing another city manager gig. I was shortlisted here and there, and I turned down a job in California about a year ago, mainly because it was just too far away, and the offer was not quite what I anticipated it to be. But what I believe to be the case is that people deduce my age fairly readily from the submittals that I turn in, as far as resumes and so forth, and they can. I think age discrimination is alive and well. And that may be just some paranoia on my part, but I'm beginning to feel that it's really unrealistic to think a 69-year-old can be gainfully employed in this profession.
Well, it's a really interesting question. I'm glad that you're bringing it up. You know, if you wanted, we could actually begin a conversation with you about that. But let me just make a couple observations, factual observations. Probably no place in the world is more youth-centric than probably Silicon Valley. And I know of a city manager in the heart of Silicon Valley who is 70 years old and going strong. I know another one that retired, who after retiring once, went to work in another community and finally retired out at age 75. But so I think it's really a matter of, and this might be the big opportunity for you here, is to say, okay, what are your hopes about being involved in local government? You know, why are those important to you? Is being a city manager the only way to do that? You know,
no.
Age is standing in front of you. You know, well, how have you dealt with a situation in the past where people thought you weren't, you know, qualified in some way? Maybe you were at other stages of your career where they thought you were too young, you know, but you probably have some success stories around that. That's how we would begin this coaching conversation with you to explore, well, what is it that you really want? And is this the only way to do it? And what are some other options? And, you know, maybe you'd like to talk with, you know, people that have gone on and, you know, been city managers at ages even greater than yours. Because, frankly, one of the ways I find most effective if I'm trying to transition into something is to point out success examples of other people and say, hey, I went to school on these other people who, are older than me in a youth-oriented culture, and were very successful. And here's what I learned from them about what they did that made actually their age, if not an advantage, at least not a disadvantage, and how they worked through it. So there's a variety of ways that you can begin to formulate and maybe reformulate some of your thinking about what your circumstance is. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does that
Thank
sound
you.
like there would be some benefit in that to you?
Well, I'm actually working as a part-time consultant with a company whose name I won't mention, but and I'm not totally satisfied with this particular organization, but I do enjoy that ability to provide my input and my experience and have it be of benefit to others on a part-time basis, but I may not have picked the exact right place for that to occur yet.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a great example of you looking around and trying some other options and taking a look at some other things. So what a coach might do with you on that is sort of ferret out with you offline, since you don't want to refer to the particular organization, but ferret out, well, what are you enjoying about that? What's missing from it? How would you like to grow and expand what you're doing to have more of those areas of fulfillment? How do you think you're going to need to be in terms of positioning yourself to do that? Those would be examples of, some of the ways we'd roll into a coaching conversation around this.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else would like to offer a comment or a question or a challenging observation about what we're offering here and how it can be useful to you, or who would like to be part of a model conversation here? I don't see.
Yeah, hey, Don, this is Drew Gorgay in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. These are comments. I'm not quite ready to be a public participant just yet, but the first is to say thank you. I think you have it exactly right with respect to several things. The biggest being that people who challenge the status quo, who are out there doing things, themselves at risk in doing so, and I would include in that, of course, enforcing ethics. A lot of people lose their jobs because they take an ethical stand, because they do the right thing. So I appreciated in your early remarks just a recognition that to stay true and to your principles and to be proud of pushing the envelope. I don't know about everybody else, but those things I believe apply to me. The second is the idea of focusing on the future and your hopes and what you really want to do. It's the only way to do it. If you it is important to go through the stages of grief and to honor that and process it however you need to, whether that's with a psychotherapist or not. But the key is to look forward. I've been in transition 13 months. I accepted a 7-month interim assignment as part of that 13 months, and I chose to just keep looking rather than compete for the permanent one. But my last comment actually is about the MIT program. I'm absolutely thrilled. I've been on these calls for not quite a year, and the advancement to add GoToMeeting, add professional development handouts in advance, still retain the call feature, and now to add one-on-one coaching is just fantastic. And if anybody wants a letter to the executive director or anybody advocating for the success of the MIT program, I'm happy to write it. It's just great. So no questions. I really appreciate your program, your presentation, doing a great job. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that feedback, and I just want to acknowledge one of the things I'm hearing in your comment is, the result of being in transition is that you've actually raised your standards for the circumstances in which you want to work. And that's why I'm reading in that that's one of the reasons why you didn't want to take the permanent position, because it just didn't feel right for you. It doesn't mean that the organization or community is bad, but it didn't feel right for you. You sort of have raised your standards. And that's one of the things I think if we can learn from the transitions that we make by our own choice or the transitions that are imposed on us is, I have to admit, in one of the transitions, I was holding on to something that wasn't right for me, but I didn't get out of the saddle myself. I got shot out of the saddle. And frankly, that was one of the best things that happened to me, because it made me, get off that horse, and get on one that was going someplace that I really wanted to go, but that I wasn't, I was kind of stuck to the title, hey, it's great to be the top of the organization, da 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 da, but all those things, but I really hadn't fundamentally dealt with that it wasn't truly me, and I hadn't found something else to transition into, and so I was hanging on to it, but I really found that, wow, the next chapter in my life became so much more fulfilling, so much more in alignment with who I am and what's rewarding to me than, if I'd stayed on that horse, or if the analogy might be that I was the horse, I was the mule, that I was beating myself. I don't know which was the case, but, it's really interesting to see how transitions are, as sad as they might be, as frustrating and as disruptive as they might be, when I acknowledge all those things, how they can be truly transformative.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't agree more, and I've said a few times on these calls, it's a real opportunity for personal growth, however that may manifest itself for the individual person, but I view it as a positive time, not some dirge. Thank you.
Well, good for you. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think that gets really to one of the most important things that I think coaching might be able to do to help people. Again, I talk about coaching as helping you write the next chapter in your talent story. But the whole idea here is, and the thing that I found for myself that really undermined me when I was making a transition, that I see undermining other people, is that I or they get sucked back into the story of our past, trying to resolve, trying to explain, trying to justify what did or didn't happen in a previous context. And the liberating value I found for coaching is its ability to help me, because I've got a coach, and to help others that I coach or that other people coach, to be forward-looking, because that's frankly all that the next people that we work with want to hear about. They don't want to hear about, who did what to whom in the past. It's like a shaggy dog story that will never win, even if we were right. It's really about the future and where we want to go with it. So I'm seeing a bunch of private messages sent to me here, but I'm not seeing people who want to particularly step forward. If you do, please unmute yourself and let us know.
Matt from Ohio.
Hi, Matt.
Senior advisor. How you doing, everybody?
Great.
Just a couple comments. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. To the one gentleman that is in upper age brackets, I'm 62, so I'm getting there. Hopefully. I retired early because I started very early. Regardless of that, what I did as I adjusted to things is there was another city manager job, and one thing I did is talk to my spouse and my kids, and they said, no, you've been at it for 33 some years out of whatever it was. You started young. let's look at something different. If you make a list on the back of an envelope, that's my habit, or whatever way you do it, of the things you have talent in, and the things that you do as city managers, which are, you won't believe the list. What you do for chambers of commerce that they would like, what you would do as far as economic development. It doesn't have to be consulting. I did some of that. Some it's okay, some it's just being prostitutional. But I don't even know that's a word, but you know what it means. And you got so much talent to put out there and so many interesting things you could do that you're of value. But if you look just at the traditional city manager system, do you really want to continue to do that after a certain point? That's just a personal observation. Managers in transition. I really appreciate everything ICMA and you're doing to put focus on this, and everyone else is doing, because it's important. I think we all hopefully do the same thing. As soon as I know of, and I usually hear pretty quickly from other colleagues or reading or whatever in this area, in the Dayton area, Cincinnati area, I make immediate contact, personal, by phone, and I just let them grieve the person. And usually have lunch or breakfast with them, and they say, what do you think? I said, no, this is your day. Grieve, say what you want to say. It doesn't matter. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, come back and I said, okay, I'll give you some observations of things you might want to consider, or maybe just, cross this line a little bit. Maybe it wasn't your fault. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. But part of our problem, as all of us, or at least me, is we are not very good listeners, oftentimes. Most people aren't very good listeners, or managers are particularly not good listeners, because we're always presenting things, and those of us that taught as well got worse in that way. So just a couple comments to share.
Those are
for
great
the one
comments.
gentleman that's older, there's some great value to what you offered, or you'd have the list would knock you over of values that you have and things you could do.
Well, great. Well, I'm hearing a number of things there. First of all, hey, oftentimes we underestimate or under-recognize the resources and talents that we have, and it's a great opportunity for people to really inventory those and inventory the resources that could help them put those talents into practice. That's one of the key things that happens through coaching. The other thing that I really want to acknowledge in what you're commenting about here is the power of listening. What you described is a great example of generous listening. I mean, you just said, hey, I'm going to take this first session and just take in what I'm hearing from you. If you have an opportunity in that listening to that person to reflect back what you're hearing, so they know that they can hear how they sound, how their story sounds to themselves, that's super. But that listening is the core of it. The most important talent of all in coaching is listening. And it is something that I find many people who are in leadership roles, they spend more time in transmission than in reception. So it's an important one to develop. Well, we're getting up to the top of the hour here, and I want to acknowledge that. I do want to sort of close here with one response to one of the questions that came in that was very practical. Someone was asking, hey, if I find one of these persons and I want to make connection with them, what do I do? Well, you click on them here and you get to the page and they say, well, do you send an email or do you call? I would encourage you, these are people who are interested in connecting with you. That's why they're volunteering. So they've already made the cross the line of saying, hey, I'm here for you. I suggest you give them a call and say, hey, I heard about this through ICMA. I'm interested in having a brief conversation to see if you might be available to coach me. Is there a time when we could have that conversation to just begin? So that then you might just offer that brief conversation, what topic you want to talk with them about, and maybe just a thumbnail sketch about yourself, and just say, hey, is this something that we could connect about? Are you available? These are busy folks, and they want to help you, and they want to support the profession. So I suggest that to you as a way to go forward in helping to make this real for yourself. And I want to respect everybody's time. Shall I turn it back over to you, Greg? And is there anything you wanted to do in follow-up? If any of you have any questions, that you want to ask me about, or how to make better use of the resources that are here, there I am on the ICMA coaching page. Just ICMA coaching at donmaruska.com. It'll send an email to me, and I'll get right back in touch with you.
Well, thanks, Don, for the very interesting hour that we just spent with you and went by so quickly. And thanks for those who participated in the call, offered some suggestions. Matt, you might want to look at being a coach there in Ohio. Talk to the OCMA and see if they're looking for a coach there.
I did volunteer. They know they're going to talk about the next meeting here in February.
Oh, good. Good. And Don, maybe I could ask you, or we could go offline, if you might have a few minutes to come to our annual senior advisor meeting on Sunday in Kansas City. And we have some senior advisors on this call, but there'll be more there, and maybe a shorter presentation because we only spend about 90 minutes in our meeting. But to bring some of the other senior advisors up to speed, and perhaps we could do a little recruiting for some coaches in other states.
Well, that'd be great. I'd like to help any way I can. I'm doing multiple sessions at the conference to try to help get the ICMA coaching program connected to as many members as possible. Let's take a look at what your schedule is. If it doesn't work for me, you know, another member of the team can connect with you, but I'll do my very best to support you in this. I really believe in what you're doing, and the important role that senior advisors have in being important folks to connect people, whether they be managers in transition or managers in place, with resources that will help them enjoy a career in local government.
Well, you just gave my pitch too, to remind those on the call that if they are in a state, and it looks like most all, that have senior advisors, to avail yourselves of that opportunity as well and reach out to them. They should also be reaching out to you, but make a connection there. And those who will be at the MITs, who will be at the annual conference in Kansas City, there will be the Monday luncheon opportunity to get together and chat with among yourselves, as well as with some of the senior advisors. Again, thanks, Don. Roz, I know you might have an item or two that you'd like to cover.
So real quick, I know we have pressed for time. Just reminding everyone about the survey, the MIT survey that went out. We really need your opinions and your comments. It's all about making the program stronger for you. And we can't do that without your input. And then just reminding everyone that we do have the travel stipend for those who want to attend the conference. It's possible to attend the conference for very little. Please contact me if you have any questions about that. That's rcaesar@icma.org. Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for this opportunity. I believe in what you're doing, and I want to be supportive of each and every one of you in having a great next chapter in your career.
And I would add my thanks again and best wishes to everyone as they pursue their career opportunities over the next several months, and hopefully you will find that opportunity and will no longer be an MIT. And I want to thank my associates, to the senior advisors who were on the call. It's helpful for us to be on these calls, hear the issues, and also learn a little bit more about what ICMA has available for the members. So enjoy the rest of it, and best of luck.
All right. Bye-bye.